First of all, thank you very much, Alfonso, for the repeat invitation coming back, which is roughly 13 years to today, as my iPhone reminded me this morning. I'll come back to the iPhone later. So what I want to talk about today, I want to start with a short story. 2011, I was at UCL, University College London, and I was asked to host a seminar about the relational company. The relational company, at the time, was trying to offer a revolutionary idea, which is that corporations should seek not just to think about maximizing profit. So much so that they should think about the environment, they should think about other stakeholders, customers, and so on. It was sponsored by a Labour MP, Stephen Timms, and I and a colleague, then Ian Hovercroft from UCL, we presented a paper, Directed Duties to the Environment. People in the room looked at us as if we were from Mars. And we were a little bit surprised, but what I'm going to speak about in the 14 minutes that I've got left is that this is a journey. And we're on a journey, and corporate law and corporate governance reflects society, reflect the values of societies, and the most important thing is it reflects what human beings are or are thinking at a particular time in society. So I am borrowing this German philosopher, Arthur Schroeppenter, I'm probably not pronouncing his name very well, who actually said that there are 3 stages in reception of any idea, which just summarize what I just was talking about. First of all, everybody thinks it's ridiculous. That's the worst idea we ever heard. Then we should oppose it, right? Because it's so bad we should oppose it. But finally, after some time, everybody embraced it and said, oh, there's a general consensus. In fact, it was so obvious all along. And this is what my point is. And the point is that it's not ridiculous, it's a journey, it takes time, but that the change would not come from legislation, the change would not come from regulators, the change will come in a few dimensions, which I will briefly touch on. And I have chosen a particular source, which is Charles Walkie, who is a co-founder of a blueprint for better business. The reason is because I was advisor for a very similar project with a different title, but had very different ideas, or very similar ideas. And the change is already there, but it will take time, and the change is not a technical change. So the change is in the mindset of those who are leading companies, and the change is for those of you who are sitting in this room and others, sort of the young generation, the generation that I meet on a daily basis as a head of school. Now you may stop and ask, what is the connection? And the answer is, and I had a discussion with a few people here in the audience earlier on, it is the younger generation who demand action. They demand action because they were born to a world which is in crisis. It is in crisis because there is a crisis in climate, and there is a crisis in trust, and there is a crisis in institutions, and there are multiple crises, and they want to see action. I see that because my students demand, when I invite them for lunches, free pizza. Do you have a vegan option? Is it sustainable? This is what's driving the change, in short. So the corporate purpose is used in this blueprint by 3 different, and I use the traffic light, the red, the yellow, and the green, by different companies in different models. And then the red one is the cynical one, which is woke capitalism, which is a word that is used repeatedly. I mean, come on. We can't move from profit maximization. Then there is the yellow one, which a lot of people kind of say, well, it's in between. So Charles Walkie described it as to burnish companies' credential, but without actually changing anything, except what I called window shopping. We care about this. We're showing you because we comply with it. But are you really meaning that? Or are you doing it because everybody else has told you that it's good for business? And that's quite a dangerous one. And then the serious way, which I want to focus on, is that the one which is to provoke a genuine shift of thinking and practice. And since a genuine thinking or a change in thinking or practice takes time, this is what I want to focus on at the moment. So Charles Walkie asked us a really important question. What is a purpose-led business? Why is it any better? and what are the real drivers of change, and why being a purpose-led business or a company will become obvious over time for business. And he answers that quite interestingly. So sorry, I use it as a test case simply because as I said, I'm advising to a different project, so I don't want to be affiliated with that. But it's a very similar thing. He says a purpose-led business has two parts or two things that if they survive together or if they exist together, then this is a purposeful company. So the first is the purposeful being, but it's also include delivering financial return to investors. That's on the left-hand side. But profit is one vital outcome, but it's not the purpose itself. So that's one understanding. And then the other thing, which I think is the more deep thing, it's a social organization that seeks to respect the dignity of people and have a positive impact on the lives of those it touches and on the planet. Now, if I stop here for a second, those of you who are cynical will think, this sounds like politicians, right? This sounds like somebody who's trying to change the world. Well, that's exactly that, but in a micro world of corporate law. And so when Charles Walkie and others and myself started looking at that 14 or 15 years ago, and others started long before that, and now others are joining, we had a very strong case to prove. But events, the pandemic, the financial crisis, the young generation, the climate change and everything, is driving it as a catalyst for this. It's not easy to achieve, but it's very easily, I think, explained by going back to my phone. Why am I looking at my phone? Well, my phone is a product of the most profitable company in the world, called Apple. Have you heard of it? Yes? Many of you have got it in your pockets. You don't have to show me. I read an interesting interview with Tim Cook, the CEO, recently. And you know why? This is the most profitable company in history. And you know why this is the most successful company in history. And you know why politicians in Europe and elsewhere are so scared of it? Because Apple has had influence the way you, me, everyone, human beings are operating. From the iPad, from the Apple, from the Mac, from whatever it is, from the iPhone to the iWatch to everything else, it has transformed the world. Very interesting thing in this interview, and I want to quote for you. Apple Park is a place that looks like came out of nowhere, that cannot possibly have come out of nowhere. The building itself is 4 stories of curved glasses, 3 underground levels, has the look of a spaceship that entered the Earth. It's got football pitches, a lake, a volleyball court. In fact, the campus runs completely on renewable energy, powered by solar panels, biogas fuel cells, costs about, hang on, 4.2 billion to build, and wears the fingerprints of each of Apple's saints, Job, who conceived, and Tim Cook and others. So the point Apple is proving can be proven anywhere else. They are profitable because they understand where the journey, where the future is. The future is here. They understand that if they invest in the business, that in the actual workplace, and I've heard earlier today by coincidence that Santander, the bank, have built something similar or different outside Madrid. So there is a model, and the model is that we should do all of these things and we can still be profitable. If we are profitable and we listen to everyone else, then we can make an effect change. So very quickly, the questions in 2013, Charles Walkie says, what is the business case and how will this make money? Nobody asked this question today, 10 years later. More leaders are encouraged, he says, to explore purpose when they see business doing the same, but it's still moving very, very slowly. 2 of my colleagues, Hannah and Ian, have already mentioned Alex Adams, a brilliant scholar, ECGI scholar from I think he moved many times, from the Business London School. He calls it grow the pie. He hasn't invented anything, but he's so articulate and he's so persuasive in the sense, why? because he shows that you can do all of these wonderful things and still make a profit. So that's the roadmap to where we need to be. And so becoming purposeful is about internal change and external factors. So becoming purposeful is not a technical thing. It's about our leaders, company leaders, some of you sitting here, myself, as a head of school, you may find it surprising, I feel I have a role to do in this as well. I need to lead by example. I need to be purposeful as well. I need to tell my students and staff how to be sustainable, and still we can be profitable as a law school. We can still grow by 700%, but still do good for the planet, and still do good for the community. Why? Because my students demand it, and the planet demanded, and the place that we live at the moment demanded. So the external factors are usually, and then I've already mentioned that the pandemic and the ESG revolution. I'm a bit cynical because I think ESG is a new term for CSR, which was used 10 years ago. But I think, this is why I chose Charles Walkie in the next slide. He basically says ESG is not the same as purpose. It's not, it's confused. Because, and this is in the bottom point, which is typically ESG measures the impact of the world on the company rather what the impact of the company has on the world. And that is the magical eureka moment of, okay, I get it. Some leaders get it, some company leaders understand it, others will follow suit. So there's no surprise that when a colleague in the ESGI, the European Corporate Governance Institute, have done a survey last month. She asked everybody, what is ESG? What do they mean, right? Surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, we're in a journey, as I said. A lot of, 1/3 or so, this is a photo screen of exactly the newsletter, so some of you may have got it. 1/3 think it's ethical, others are not convinced yet, but we're moving in the right direction. But the fact that there is an opposition, I think it's a healthy thing, because it suggests that people get it. Because if there wasn't opposition, then they wouldn't have got it. It's a serious thing. It will happen. It will happen in certain parts of the world quicker than others. It will happen in companies that understand it. I also chose one of my former, Christopher Sol. He was the Slaughter and May senior partner. And I worked with him many years ago. Now he runs his own, as he called it, Christopher Sol Associate. This is his guide from January that he sent to board of directors in the UK. He basically told them what a terrible year we had in ESG, and then asked them, directs them, this is the question you should ask as a board. I'm sorry, I can't read that far even with my glasses. So he says, these are the 2 themes to discuss at your meetings at boards. You should ask, how do we benchmark against the top 3 competitors instead of in terms of ambition, quality, and so on. So he basically calls everyone else. He's converted as well. This is not the same person that I talked to when he was a senior partner in the most profitable law firm in London, Slaughter and May. Now, he's independent, he can say that, right? But he's on a mission, and he's changed that. And so, one interesting statistic that I come across, and it's not surprising, is that the public sector is leading this change. So in public sector companies or universities and things, the change for sustainability, the change for purpose has already accelerated. In other, this is from the Financial Times Fujitsu, survey that was published in the end of December. It's already happening. Banking follows suit 62%, but in other retail is going slowly. Everybody's got their own way of doing things, and it will take some time. But the most important thing is that the journey has started. And so these are the title of the books that we're seeing right now. Corporate capitalism, as I said, I'm not going to speak about because I endorsed it and I was part of them, advising them. But everybody now understands that we need to change direction. So I'm not going to talk about Alex Adams, but he basically says it's time for change, and I think it's a great start, but there's still work to do, and so it will take some time, and I'm convinced we will get there. Thank you for your attention.